Happy holidays to you all. My name is Eric Tars, and I serve as the Senior Policy Director at the National Homelessness Law Center, as well as the Vice Chair of the Board of the U.S. Human Rights Network. I'm sorry I can't join you live today, but I'm in transit to our national conference where we'll be developing strategies to protect the poorest and most marginalized among us in this time of unprecedented threats to their rights and to their lives. In this time of Advent, I know you're all thinking of the Christmas story. If Mary and Joseph were alive today in the states of Kentucky, Oklahoma, Tennessee, or Texas, and had to make their own shelter after the innkeepers turned them away, Jesus might have been greeted by police officers instead of shepherds and wise men, thanks to new state laws based on a template from the extreme right-wing Cicero Institute outlawing camping for anyone who doesn't have a permanent residence. These laws include the use of any form of bedding outside as camping, meaning baby Jesus' swaddling clothes could be confiscated as evidence of a crime. Were Moses and his tribe wandering the wilderness in Tennessee, sheltering themselves could get them charged with a felony and get them locked up in prison for up to 6 years and permanently remove their right to vote. In addition to their camping bans, the Cicero Institute's template bill also calls for reducing due process protections for unhoused persons with mental illness, so it's easier to involuntarily commit them to mental institutions or subject them to mandatory outpatient treatment plans with jail as a consequence for noncompliance. The template also requires states to shift funding away from proven housing and service-oriented programs to temporary measures like detention camps, where people can be forced to go under threat of arrest, but don't even provide the roof over your head or 3 meals a day that are required in jail. These statewide measures are passing in mostly red states, but all across the country, politicians in both red and blue communities are passing new laws that punish our neighbors who can't afford a place to live and have to sleep, shelter, and conduct other life-sustaining activities in public. We've seen many of those laws at the local level when city councils and mayors come up with these ineffective and just plain bad ideas to deal with homelessness. What's new is Cicero's well-funded, coordinated push for those laws at the state level, and what's even worse is Cicero's founder and primary funder, Joe Lonsdale, a tech billionaire and venture capitalist, is now advising the incoming Trump administration. On the campaign trail, Trump himself pledged a national camping ban and a plan to exile our fellow Americans to remote detention camps for the so-called crime of simply not being able to afford the rent. Our organization has been fighting these laws in court, but sadly, this past June, in a case called Johnson versus Grants Pass, the Supreme Court took away our ability to argue that enforcing these laws against people experiencing homelessness when they have nowhere other place to go is cruel and unusual punishment under the Eighth Amendment. While we still have other legal theories we can try, the court has essentially paved the way for Trump, the Cicero Institute, and local politicians to arrest, ticket, fine, and exile people experiencing homelessness on a mass scale. And in fact, just since the Grants Pass decision in June, more than 130 communities have already introduced new anti-homeless laws or amended old ones, making them harsher, and they've already passed in 75 of those communities. While these laws and policies will hurt everyone, we know they will hurt Black, Brown, LGBTQ, and disabled communities first and worst. Moreover, every unnecessary encounter between a police officer and an unhoused person comes with the potential for police violence, which again will be visited most harshly on those with the most marginalized intersecting identities. Cicero lobbyists and other politicians cloak their intentions with misdirections, both claiming they are the ones who actually care about people experiencing homelessness because they don't want to see people remain on the streets, while simultaneously dehumanizing them with stereotypes that make people afraid and more likely to sacrifice unhoused people's rights for their own comfort. The reality that they never mention is, in fact, there is no room at the inn. The number of unhoused people exceeds the number of shelter beds in almost every community, and there's a 7 million unit shortage of affordable rentals. Nowhere in the country can a minimum wage worker afford even a 1-bedroom apartment, and in many places they can't even afford a studio. There is some good news. When elected officials hear the facts and the stories of people who've lived through criminalization, they can do the right thing. Cicero bills have only passed in 1/3 of the states where they've been introduced, meaning we've beaten them 2/3 of the time. Thousands of people have already endorsed our National Housing Not Handcuffs campaign and are using its resources to fight these bills. But the Cicero Institute is fighting back and using its deep financial pockets to target state legislatures, and these bills are still popping up at the local level, and now we're about to see the entire federal government getting mobilized to round up undocumented immigrants to throw them into detention camps, and they've already signaled that after immigrants, the next ones they're coming for are American citizens who, again, just simply can't afford the rent. So today, the call to be our brother's keeper means not just individual acts of charity, but proactively educating local, state, and federal officials about the harms of criminalizing our most vulnerable neighbors or forcing them into institutions, and the need that instead we should be creating more interim and permanent housing solutions with voluntary services where needed, so that everybody has a chance to have a path to not just surviving, but to thriving and living with dignity. So this holiday season, don't just volunteer to serve meals at a soup kitchen, go that extra step to serve up knowledge to your elected officials that housing, not handcuffs, is how we end homelessness. If you want to be in touch, please reach out to the organizers and they can connect us. In the meantime, Merry Christmas.